Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Investment Club PCS. I am your host, Kane Webb, joined as always by Stephanie. Hello.
Hello.
And today we're going to tell my story. No, for those of you who are just catching up with the first time, Investment Club PCS is a show about survivors who were in the PCS program for any length of time. It's an opportunity for them to be able to come on the show, share their experiences, relate to other people who are also in the facility, and just sort of to uh, allows us to work through a lot of different things. It's our own little space. Um, all of our information is down below in our little bio there. If you need to get in touch with us, you can email pcssurvivors@gmail.com. We also have a sign-up sheet if you are a former student who would like to come on here. So yeah, it's wonderful to be back again. And today I'm on the hot seat, which means you're doing the cooking, which means I'm gonna shut up and let you take over.
Oh boy, I'm not
I
the
know, all
greatest
right. Yeah,
cook.
it's your first experience here.
Ooh. All right. Well, let's first start off. Can you give me the times and the dates you were there? Because I know you were there two separate stays. So,
Yeah, so
um,
I think the first day is, I believe it was, I want to say it was either 96 or 97. I'm like pretty sure it was 97 until the year 99, and then I came back from 99 and then stayed through till that was about like a 6 month stay into 2000, and then I graduated and left for good with no ability to return. Though since we've been talking about this, I have had 4 different dreams in which I have been placed back in PCS. So I feel like I'm on 6 stays now. 6 different stays.
oh God, I know that feeling. My dreams actually switched as I got older and things would get stressful. I would dream that I was there and I was relieved to be there. I know, really weird.
I was like an adult though, like when I'm there, and like somehow I got sent back and I actually can't leave. Like I can't check myself out, even though I'm over 18 until I commit my program. Right. And like I'm older than half the staff there, and they're still like trying to make me take a chair, but I pull out my disability placard and they're like, fine, then sit on the couch. Like they're very weird dreams.
Oh Lord. All right. Well, let's jump into it. Um, can you tell us a little bit about, just briefly, kind of what led up to you being there? How did you get sent there? What did you know about it before?
Um, so I'd been right around, there's like a full backstory to this. So I guess I might as well tell like the whole thing. So going back to like when I was born, my mom had me at a very young age, and she wound up like giving me up for adoption 3 different times. And all 3 couples ended up giving me back because I wouldn't sleep at night. I had ADD and ADHD, and they wanted a normal child. So my grandmother, in her infinite wisdom, filed for guardianship against her own daughter, my mom. And in a court battle that largely split the family in half, Mary, my grandmother, got that custody, but Karen still had visitation rights. Now, I had mostly lived with Mary um, incident free up until around the time I was in about 6th and 7th grade, which is when I began having more and more contact with my mom. And I really didn't like living with Mary. And so Karen was like, you can come live with me now that I was older. She wanted me to come live with her. And never mind the fact that she had like no real she was living with my aunt and uncle at the time, and they're not really the best people, but like more on that in a second. So after a while, like I finally got to go over to I just finally I remember telling my friend's mom that I was tired of being hit by my grandma, which is true. She had hit me with like several different objects, and when she got frustrated, she would lash out and hit me with stuff because she was physically frail and I'm much bigger. So I wound up convincing my friend's mom to get the cops involved, and we decided I was going to go live with my mom, which ended up being a case of like, be careful what you wish for. I transferred into Marine View Junior High, and I started getting my ass kicked pretty much like every day. I was getting beaten at school, and then I would get home and it wasn't really the best environment either. Like my mom really didn't spend much time with me. She was always like hooking up with other guys or this, that, and the other. And it just, my aunt and uncle did most of the punishing, and their idea of punishing me while I was getting jumped and beaten up at school was to literally take everything out of my room and leave me with sheets and a book. They gave me the book Shogun. Yeah, in seventh grade. Like, I'm going to read that crap. But anyway, it's a good book. I just don't know that it's for a seventh grader. But anyway, my mom wound up meeting this dude on AOL, and we moved out to Virginia for her and him to be together. And then he wound up being abusive, and to me and to her. And she immediately got out of that. And we went and stayed with my uncle. And again, I was getting jumped in school every day, and nothing really helped. Like it just sucked, and my home life got so much worse that my mom wound up having a mental breakdown when we couldn't stay with my uncle anymore because of my lashing out and being frustrated. She put me into a mental hospital. But then when while I was in there and they were going to discharge me, she wasn't ready for me to come back home. So she wanted me to stay in these facilities. So she had me sent to a group home, which I don't know why she just didn't send me home to Mary. Like what she was doing was so beyond selfish and horrible. And so she had me sent to this group home where I was like 12 years old, but because of my size, I was put in a teenage group home, even though I'm only like 11 and 12. And so I didn't succeed at the group home, so they sent me to juvenile hall because apparently that's what they do in Virginia. So I wound up going from Tidewater Detention Hall or Tidewater Psychiatric to to Salem House to Tidewater Detention Hall. And then it's at that point that my grandma found out and she brought me back home. But then, like, my grandma she was never home. She was always out meeting men. And at one point, I actually called her and told her that there was someone in our house with us, and like she told me I was just imagining things and that I needed to like let it go. Yeah. That dude wound up trying to kill her and I later that night and was actually arrested, and he was on his gang initiation and his task was to kill two people. And we were going to be it. He had ended up being in the house within my room the entire night, and I was begging her to come home because I knew something was wrong, but I didn't know what. And she refused and left me in there. Anyhow, I started being a normal teenager and trying things, and she just decided she didn't want to deal with it. So she had me put in this place called College Hospital Costa Mesa. But while I was in there, she started working with Orange County Mental Health and the school district of Irvine to get me sent to Provo because they'd had a little small program where Irvine Unified was sending people to there. And they sent me to this facility where Like, I just had no idea what this place was, but I was in like college hospital and they made it seem like, oh, you're only going to be there for a little while. Later, when I got there, I found out that if Irvine sends you there, you're there for 2 years at a minimum. And I'm just like, this is a joke. But yeah, I had never heard of Provo before I went there. I didn't get kidnapped or anything. I just went straight from the what do you call it? The mental hospital to Provo, and walked in the door and was just like, oh crap.
Yeah, what is like your first memory, or like how was that experience when you first walked into the building? I mean, what are some things you remember originally?
So I think the person who picked me up was, I can't remember his last name, but I remember he was an older dude. He was a senior on. His name was Dave. But he picked me up and he was really cool in the car. And then we got there. And the minute we walked past those doors, his demeanor changed. And I was like, this motherfucker was gaslighting me the whole time. And I knew. Like, that you go in, I walk through the lobby. It's kind of like you said, I'm doing the check, and they're like, nope, take it all off. We'll give you clothes. And I'm just like, I've been to juvenile hall before. So I'm kind of like, okay, I've done the whole strip search thing before. But this was a little different because in juvenile hall, in most cases, kids know they're not going to be there that long, especially if you haven't like really done anything that where a court's going to send you there. Like anytime I was there, it was never for anything legal. It's because I'd failed out of a group home, which to my knowledge isn't a crime. But I this time it was different for me because I knew I wasn't going anywhere. In fact, I didn't know when I'd be going anywhere. And I just remember like the first, like you said, almost like 3 or 4 months, I just remember crying every single night going to sleep, just like wanting to be back home and just thinking like this is god awful, dude. Like I remember writing in these letters, just like tears streaming down my face as I'm sitting in investment, like begging my mom to like bring me home because like I'm not getting along with my therapist. I can't move up. And this entire time, like, I'm writing to the person who lied to put me in there. She was like, you ended your story by saying probably the most important thing that you could have said. Like, you talked about how I wish that I had been able, like, my parents would like own up to their part. Like, my grandmother lied and gaslit people. She was always perfect. She never did anything wrong, and it was everybody else's fault. But then you look at her personal life and the decisions that she would make, and you're just like, wait a minute. Like, you were out hooking up with every man you possibly could have instead of being home, being a mom. But because you bought me a whole bunch of stuff, you get to tell people that you're a good parent. Like, you hit me with a hockey stick on Christmas and got arrested. Like, on what planet are you the good parent here? But like, we never even talked about her abusing me when I got there. All we ever focused on was me smoking pot.
Mhm. When you were
That's all
you
I'd done at that point was smoke pot and have a couple of sips of beer where, to be honest, I pretended to be drunk because all my friends were drinking, but I thought the stuff tasted like piss water. Now, don't get me wrong, man. I spent a good 10 years drunk when I got turned 21. But like when I was a kid, this stuff tasted like crap.
Mhm.
Like all I'd really done is smoke pot, and I might have used some N dust to get high on some inhalants, but like that was the extent of like me doing crap. Like I'm in there with people who are smoking like meth and heroin, and I'm just like, man, I know that I was causing trouble, but like what?
Yeah.
Like what?
So that
Yeah.
first like couple months, you're talking about, I don't what I experienced too, just like crying and like it's basically that feeling of abandonment, right? And so even with everything you're saying about, I'm curious, everything you're saying about like your grandma and stuff like that, was that how you felt then or what you realize now that you're older? Because when you were there originally, you still have this like feeling of like, I want to go home.
Um, I knew that I had done stuff, but I also knew that my family situation was so unbelievably complicated and that my grandmother was an expert at manipulating anyone into getting them. I will admit that I learned probably more about how manipulative she was later on in life, but I knew enough then to know that it was I was going to have to take on most of the blame if I wanted to get out of there. And I had a real moral problem doing that in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, I think the reason that I refused to do it is because my actual mom got involved, and I think that she began telling my count, like, the only thing I had going for me is that once my actual mom got involved, she knew how manipulative Mary was and how vindictive and how cruel and just how awful of a human being this person is, and was able to fill Larry in on a whole bunch of stuff that I think helped me at least get further in the program then. But in the beginning, the counselor that I have, all she had was Mary, and she didn't care what Karen had to say. This was a woman who only cared about the person that was paying the bills.
Yeah.
And if Mary said I was doing something, then as far as she was concerned, I was doing it and I needed to fix it and I needed to own it. And that's why we didn't get along, is because she didn't seem to understand that even if I admitted that I did need to be in there for behavioral issues, there was so much trauma that had been done to me as a child that that alone at least deserved some. Well, hold on a second here. We're talking about a young child who's been abused, abandoned, and literally bullied every single day at school. Of course, he's going to be acting out. The fact that I got thrown into this facility both then and now still makes no sense to me as to how you could do that to a child who was clearly acting out because, like, to give you an example of how awful this woman was, I knew that she was not my mother, but she forced me to call her mom and wanted me to call my own mom my sister.
Wow. That's like what blows my mind about so many stories that I hear is that we are literally pigeonholed, that we are the problem, solely we are the problem. I don't know, at least in my experience, there was not any talking about the family dynamics, how they participated in it. And I mean, I did not even address my own bullying experience until much later in life. Like
It
that
never
didn't
even
even
came up
come
in
up.
Provo. Like, I
It
never
never,
got to talk
yeah,
about it.
nothing ever came up. That's kind of what I was saying before is like, I never really dealt with my core issues. It was just like whatever they wanted to believe and focus on. And yeah, and I wonder, do you think that's because that wasn't kind of like common in therapy then? I know like nowadays it's kind of a big thing, like attachment theory and trauma and all that, but why do you think there was that like
I
disconnect where
honestly
they just
think,
didn't?
man, honestly, I think it's a combination of parents finding a place that'll tell them whatever they want to hear, which my grandma was an expert at. She could find a doctor to diagnose me with anything that she wanted them to diagnose me with. Even though when I would be addressed as an adult, they said, wow, man, like, no, you did not have this. You have all the markings of this. And like, my grandma would doctor shop, and I cannot help but wonder how much of Provo, whether it was under charter or what, who, I don't know. Like, I was there when it was charter. I don't know what it was like under any other person, but like, how much of that is us being put in a facility where they got exactly that, like the parent got to hear whatever they wanted, because I never knew how much it was to put a child there. Like, all I know is that Irvine paid for it, and I still don't know how much it costs to put a kid there. But like, I know it ain't cheap, and I know that really, really rich people have put their kids in it, and I know that I can't help but wonder how much of that facility is like, these people are going to pay us a lot of money, we'd better tell them that they're right about their kids. I don't know, dude. Like, I can't come up with any other reason to take that path of therapy. Like, I would be surprised genuinely if the people who went in there, because, like, let's be honest, there were some parents who put their kids in there over the most mind-bogglingly stupid stuff.
Mhm.
Like, I met people that were so nerdy and quiet, and I'm like, why are you in here? Like, what did you do? And like, I'm nerdy, at that time, but like, I can't imagine what some of these kids did. And it just mystifies me, because I know a couple of those kids were in there for like single issue things. But outside of those people who were there for like single issues and maybe were on intensive, I can't imagine that facility genuinely helped any single person with their core issues, if they even got talked about when they were there.
Yeah, I agree. I agree 100%. So, let's see. We're kind of bringing up other kids that saw there. Did you have, any one particular person or a couple people that you were really close with that kind of helped you through?
Yeah, I had a couple people. Like, this dude, Ryan Cape, was my absolute best friend when we were in there. And it's pretty cool too, because he had graduated the thing before me, and I got to go to his graduation. And then he turned around and drove from Reno, Nevada up to my graduation, and it was really cool. Like, then we drove back down to Orange County and we hung out together. And it was just like, it was cool. Like, I remember we were best friends on orientation. We were stuck in pre-unit together. I remember one time we weren't going anywhere, but we had a run plan because we knew something big was going down, and we were like, dude, when they knock that guy out, what we'll do is this. We were talking out of our ass, man. But like, yeah, we had a run plan together that never went beyond that night or that conversation. But
Did you ever get caught with your plan?
no, 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 because we only talked about it. We weren't dumb enough to put it down.
Yeah.
We knew the counselor that was there was asleep. Like, we knew he was asleep and upstairs. So we were cool, and we were the only people in the back room that was in the very back of the pre-unit thing. Like, there was only one room back there, and it only had enough for 2 beds. And he and I happened to be in that room together. So we could do the whole like leaning, he could lean down over his bunk and we could just like whisper real quietly. And this guy also didn't care if you talked past shutdown, so long as you were like quiet about it and didn't disturb anybody. You always have those cool counselors who let you whisper and
Mhm.
talk past shutdown. This guy was that guy. So we totally planned it out with, that's how we were going to get out. But Ryan was probably like the closest thing I had to like a brother in there. But then there was this other counselor there that his name was Tyler, and he ran short term. And I remember he had like this curly red hair, but he was at Utah Valley when I was there. I guess it's called Utah State or something, Utah Valley University now, but it was UVSC when I was there. And because I was really good in math, he always came with his homework. And I would just, whenever he would even just call me down to short term to like chill with him. But I got to just sit up there with him and he'd have me like fill out and do roll call. And he would bring Carl's Jr. and like slide me stuff. So like I didn't mind going and helping him when everybody else was out playing. Like I'd go down to short term and just hang out with him and he'd let it happen. But like, he was really cool. And the cool thing about it was he wasn't just having me do his homework. He actually wanted me to teach him, and I treated him like somebody who could learn the subject that we were talking about. Like he treated me with the respect of knowing that I knew more than him, even at being like as young as I was.
Wow.
I treated him with the respect of saying, like, hey, man, you're not an idiot. Like, you're a really brilliant guy and you can do this. And like, I would celebrate his successes with him. And like, he was always really cool. Like, when he came, like, got a test or when he got like a great grade on his test or something, like, I'd always pump him up and I'd be like, see, did any of the stuff I told you helped? And he'd be like, yeah, that one trick you taught me. But like, that guy and then Jackson, who was the guy that did inventory. Everybody loved Jackson. He was our morning counselor, and Jackson was always really, really cool to me. I don't know that we were like super close because he was really cool with everybody. So sometimes in my head, I think Jackson I think I put it in my head that he liked me maybe more than he did, but he was always a really nice guy and I trusted him. But Tyler was probably like the dude that like that one counselor.
On the flip side, like, did you have any, like, what was your experience as far as, I don't know, were you like the troublemaker? Did you get in a lot of fights, or did you have any staff that really gave you a hard time?
Dude,
I
I
mean,
had staff that straight up hated me. They called me Beaker because I would cry a lot and they would make fun of that because the men aren't supposed to cry. So they called me Beaker because they said my voice sounded like Beaker when I was crying. But uh there was this senior on named Ted Larson, and he was just the biggest dick on the planet, man. Ted was that counselor that like only liked the cool kids. Like, and he wasn't shy about it. If you were somebody that you would have been like a cool kid on the outs, then Ted treated you with respect. But if you were like a nerd in high school, then Ted probably treated you like you were a nerd. And
how
the
how how old were your staff? Like, you're saying counselors, were they actually licensed counselors? Because I
no,
remember
they
our
called him
staff
that.
were our staff were just staff. Like, they were essentially paid babysitters. They had no training and they
Yeah,
were young. They were like in their 20s.
they called him Unit 4 counselor, like Unit 5 like it's weird that they call him that, but in most cases, no. Most of them, like I think our Unit 5 counselor, Eric, actually had some degrees in child whatnot, like, and he would fill in as a senior on sometimes. He actually had studied in Korea for his mission and spoke like fluent Korean as well as having, and he was like the whitest like Mormon ever. Maybe outside of the physics teacher, Wayne, I think his last name was Bishop, Mr. Bishop, but he also spent time in Korea, and that's how he knew Eric. And they would like leave each other little messages in Korean, but they called them counselors back then. Even
Hmm.
like school desk counselor, like Jackson was the morning counselor. You know what's funny? You bring this up because when I said in your interview that the girls' campus was vastly different, I think we should have one episode where I mention what something is called because you guys always say on investment. We were never on investment, we were put in investment. And I always find it crazy that like we had different terminologies for like the same thing, even though the campus was like this far apart. And you guys were always there for like talk time or pool or something. Like how did the culture get so different that like it was called one thing over here and another thing over there? And I also wonder if it was a time thing. Maybe back when I was there, when Charter was the owner, they called them counselors, and then there's like new laws or something, and so they couldn't be called that.
Right.
So I
Yeah.
don't know, but yeah, when I say counselor, I'll say therapist when I'm referring to anybody with an actual degree, and counselor will often just be the unit staff or whomever else. But that's what they
Yeah.
call them.
So how long were you there your first day? And like how long did it take you to advance? Kind of tell me
I was
like a little bit about your experience the first time. How'd that go for you?
2.5 years the first time.
Wow.
And I can't remember how long it took me to get to pre-unit, but I remember that the orientation counselor, Richard Woodruff, and I hated each other when I first got there, which is crazy because we haven't gotten to my second stay yet. But on my second stay, we loved each other. It was the craziest dynamic ever. But he he and I had so many problems, and I always felt like he was too aggressive. I don't know, man. Like I just could not seem to get out of orientation, man. But once I finally got to pre-unit, I never made it past first week achievement.
I was, I think, advanced unit, and that was it. I
That
never
was how
made
far I made it. I never made it past it. I was advanced unit. It didn't matter which day we are talking about. The latter stay, I asked them not to move me up. I said I wanted to stay advanced unit because I wanted to stay on the unit. I liked being a room leader. I liked having minimal to no responsibility at that point. But
Mhm.
on the first day, I was legitimately trying. Like I wanted to be achievement and get to advanced achievement like so very badly. But like I never made it past first week achievement, and I can't count the number of times I lost that.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
It
but
felt impossible. You would try
no.
so hard and it was impossible, I think.
And they had like weird rules too. Like if you were like senior or advanced senior, like a class one became a class two, and it was like, why? Because we expect more out of you? Like, how is like, come on, man. Everybody has a bad day. Like, I don't know, man. I just could not seem to get it going.
What were some of the things that would, you'd get marked down for, get infractions for? What were some of the things that they were putting against you?
I had a really hard time with the shirt tucking rule. I had a really hard time with poor attitude. I got frustrated like way too easily. Self removal was another one. Like I would get really frustrated. And like even if I were just trying to take like a timeout and like set myself over aside somewhere, they'd be like, "Oh, so you took a class two for self removal?" And I'm like, "No, I was just taking 5 minutes to gather my composure." Well, that's a
Ugh.
self removal. No, yeah. I wound up getting a whole bunch of class twos for self removal because I learned I needed like to get a hold of myself in a lot of instances.
And
And
that's a good coping skill. Like in the real world, when you're overwhelmed, you step away. You take a little break.
and I think it explains why I have such a problem with anxiety now,
Oh
is
yeah.
because they never allowed me to have those like minutes to cool down. But those were like the biggest thing. Like I remember one time in the early going, I actually got a class two from my own therapist, and I was just like, for having a poor attitude in therapy. And I'm just
Mm.
like, that's when I decided I was done with her. I was like, I'm gonna argue this girl. And then fortunately, like shortly after that, she quit. And I got like really, really lucky. I would probably still be in there if she were my therapist.
It's so frustrating, the poor attitude thing, because that's such a subjective thing for someone, and you're in therapy, like that should be the place that you can be honest with your depression, anger, frustration, whatever, but then to get it spun around and to get
Not what
literally a
you have
class
to go to.
2, that's, oh my God, it's insane.
It sucked. And I also wasn't really like doing that well in school either. It was really weird. I remember the exact moment in life that this switch flipped over in my head. Like I was sitting in short term and I had nothing. We were in the auditorium where they held talk time on the boys' campus. I'm just sitting in those like auditorium chairs and I'm looking at the math book. I was just looking the person sitting next to me had the Algebra 2 book, and I was like, "Can I look at that?" Because I needed something to do in order to get my F's. And so I just started opening it up, and I was like looking at trigonometry, and I started trying to do what it had in the book, like in a way late chapter, and I got the answer right. And then I tried another problem and I got the answer right. Now, keep in mind at this point, I'm still failing pre-algebra. But then I just sat there with that Algebra 2 book and I started being able to do the lessons in that out, like something in my brain, like instantaneously flipped over in that auditorium. And I remember I went back to the math teacher, who was Dave Campbell at the time, and I was like, I want to test out of pre-algebra. And when I tell you, girl, that he laughed in my face, he let out one of the loudest laughs I've ever heard. Well deserved. Well deserved. I would have laughed at me at that point because he had to find ways to pass me because I sucked so much at pre-algebra. And I tried to explain to him, he's like, there is absolutely no way you taught yourself trigonometry while you were sitting in short term. Like, he's just like, there's no way. So he gives me the A version of a test in that Algebra 2 book, and I passed it with a 95%. And he is convinced I have cheated. So
Mhm.
he's like, I'm going to give you the B version of the test. And he has me sit right in front of him. And I hand it back to him. And this time I got a 96. And he was just like, I don't know how you did it, but something happened. And that
Mhm.
was like the moment that like he stopped treating me dumb. And once he did, it sort of fed into like me believing in myself. And that tiny bit of self-confidence snowballed like academically. Just that tiniest bit of having one person believe in you. Be like, you can do this, dude. Like, it was crazy. So, but I was like the one thing that happened.
How long into your stay was that? Did that happen?
Honestly, I think maybe somewhere around the year mark, but it could have been even 3 months before that or 3 months after. So yeah.
So was there ever a time that you started to get like a handle on things? I know you said you made it up to advanced unit. Did you
No,
kind of get
not within the program itself. No, not until my second visit.
so
Like,
how did you end up leaving the first time?
so I left the first time because they thought that I could do better going to this program that they'd found for me in Beverly Hills called Linden Center. They'd had a couple people successfully transition over to there. So I went there, and there were actually two people that I was with PCS who were going to the school associated with Linden Center. And I kind of did really well there, a little too well. I became so popular, which for the first time in my life, people were looking to me to make decisions. People were looking to me to be like, well, what do you want to do today? And I'm like, wait, when did I become the cool kid? And I may have let it slip that my grandma took Oxy and Soma and a whole bunch of other stuff. And once kids at the school found out, they asked me to bring it to them, and they did. And this one girl overdosed in the school bathroom on cocaine and narked me out and said that I gave it to her. And I was like, first off, I don't even know what cocaine looks like. The only thing I gave her was this. Like, dude, I got the biggest punishment that place had ever doled out. And then my mom was like, they didn't kick me out. They wanted me to stay there. But my grandma had me thinking that another place in San Diego would be better. She had me transferred there, and they legitimately were the worst group home I've ever been in. The counselors either beat the hell out of us or allowed us to get drunk and high. There was no in between at New Haven in San Diego. Absolutely no in between. And so after running away from there like 4 times, they asked if I just wanted to go back to Provo, because they said, like, if you do, you can graduate high school in 6 months. And I was like, let's do it. I know that place like the back of my hand. I can be in and out in 6 months and be done with these facilities forever. Bring it on. I'll put myself back in. And I did. I asked to go back, and then I graduated in 6 months. The entire
How
time I
long,
was there, I knew I was leaving in 6 months.
how long were you gone for?
Like 5 to 6 months.
Okay, and then you
I
went back
left
for
in,
6.
let's put it this way. I left in 99 and came back in 99. So
Yeah. And then you ended up leaving for good because you graduated and
yeah. And
turned
Irvine
18, I
Unified
guess.
School District wouldn't pay anymore. And
Yeah,
because they were funding the vast majority of my stay, there was just, plus there was nothing Provo could do anymore if you're not in school. Like, you have to be in school as part of their program. And if you've graduated, then you're an adult. Like, not their problem anymore.
right, right.
So
Well, are there any other like memories that you want to share that kind of stick out to you that you
yeah,
feel people should know?
before we get out of here, I'll tell a fun story. So I apparently have found out that there have since been a way worse attack. Apparently, a staff member died. But
Oh,
at the
wow.
time, yeah, this wasn't when I was there though. I just found this out last night. But at the time, I was looking for pictures to put up, and I was like, staff member killed at PCS. I was like, holy crap! And it was on
Wow.
the girls' unit too. It was on
Oh
the
my
girls'
God.
side. Yeah, yeah, yeah. They had
Is
to.
that recently?
Yeah, they had to put people in jail. I'll send you the article. It was wild.
Wow.
Yeah. So anyway, when I was there were these kids. There was Marcus De Benedetto, Stephen Parsi, and Scott Kruger. And when I tell you that they had a run plan, they took the seat off the back of the toilet. We were all an investment. And they took the seat off the back of the toilet, and they waited for the night counselor to come into the bathroom, thinking that they took all long. And when he came in there, they hit him over the head with that porcelain on the back of it. And it was so loud that that's how they got caught, because the senior on Dave heard the smashing of it, and he knew something was wrong in investment. Came flying in. They'd gotten the keys off of him and were partially out the door, but they had to like call a dial 9 for like everybody in the world to come in at that time. Like, it was crazy. And I remember those dudes got 5,000 ips. I had never seen anybody get that much of a punishment. Like, they had to earn sweats. They were put in investment and in solitary for isolation for so long. Like, that's where they slept, was in isolation. Like,
Mhm.
it was wild. And that was like for several months. And oh yeah, there was one other dude, Ramlal. He was a part of it too. I forgot about that guy until today. But yeah, that was like, and that same guy, Ram, had his jaw broken because he snitched on Scott. So Scott broke his jaw for doing that. He hit him with one punch and he completely shattered the kid's jaw.
God.
Yeah.
I always heard there was a lot more violence at the boys' campus. I mean, it makes sense with teenage boys and all that pent up anger and frustration, but I can't imagine living that way.
No, it was wild, man. It was wild. And knowing that at any given time there could be fights on the boys' campus, it was
Hmm.
crazy. But you know what? You say that, but the girls' campus had a lot more sexual assault. So six in
Hmm.
one hand, half a dozen in the other. To me, I don't think there was a true, oh, well, we had the worst experience. I
Right,
think they
right.
just all sucked.
Yep,
Guy or
absolutely.
girl, you were abused, you were subjected to things that you should never have seen. And at the end of the day, like it's just a wild time. Like the crazy part is that I was in there
Oh, really?
I was in there with Paris
Did
at
you see
the
her at talk
exact
time?
yes, I did. I actually did. I saw her at talk time. I talked to her. I actually got a class too from another actress who got me one on one of the outdoor outings, Sasha Barrese. She was there at the same time as Paris Hilton, who was also there at the same time as Cameron Douglas, who was on our campus. And our English teacher, Pat Bagley, loved hanging out with that dude. I think he lived vicariously through Cameron. So, three famous people were all there at the exact same time I was. Not like, oh, I think I saw them. Like, nah, dude, I was there in a group with one of them, had talk time with another one of them, and was in a
Wow.
unit with the third one. Like, can verify it, I was there.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, it was actually pretty crazy. The guys campus knew immediately who she was. Like it was pretty wild, man. So yeah, yeah, fun times, dude.
so what, tell me a little bit about what happened to you afterwards. So you graduated high school, now you're 18. I mean, what did you do? Did you go back home with your crazy family or?
I tried, but it didn't work out, and I pretty much like my grandma did nothing for me after like the age of 14. Like she would give me money, but like I was pretty much on my own. I partied around, lived with various different girls, and was homeless on the beach for a while. And then I went up to Bakersfield, and I was dating this girl who was in a sorority and a nursing major, and she was wondering why I could do her homework, but she couldn't. But I only had a high school education, so she forced me to apply to school, or else I was going to be a very miserable man for the next however long we were together. And she used her assets to her advantage and said, "You're going to apply to school." And I did, and I wound up. Her and I aren't together, but I wound up getting two different degrees, and yeah, life kind of ended up working out for me, but not for my family. Like they're dead. I don't talk to them anymore. Well, I couldn't even if I wanted to. They're dead. But yeah, mostly just made it here by myself. So
That good old self-sufficiency that
yeah,
you learned.
self-sufficiency will get it done. Yeah.
Oh
So,
God.
oh man. Dang, I didn't think my story was going to take up that much time. I'm like, we only got 5 minutes left, and I'm sitting here going, wow, crap, I better wrap up my own story.
That was awesome. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah, man. And we didn't even get to my second stay, too, which is the best part. That's
Yeah.
fine. We had to stick that one in the bank. Yeah. Um, but please, like, this is the whole point of doing this is to have these memories and to be able to share our story and our
Mhm.
situations and identify these patterns that we all went through. Like, I'm really glad you asked me some of the questions you did, and I know with some of
I
them
have one more
following my template.
question.
Yeah, go for it.
I'm curious because this is something I get asked. If you could go back and change it, would you change it?
No,
Same.
I've thought
It's,
about it, and no, I
yeah.
think it's too much a part of who I am that I don't think I know what I'd be without that experience. So
Right. Exactly.
it feels like the answer to that should be yes, but I feel like any person who's been through what we've been through will tell you that if they came out on the other side of it all right, that the learning experience that it gave them and the skills and the resources it gave them to know that they could survive in just about almost any situation is not something that you're going to let go of.
Right. I just
It's
got
not a
goosebumps.
skill that you come by honest. It's not a skill that you come by very easily, or for a lot of people, if ever. And so
Yeah.
if you're lucky enough to be one of those people who know that about yourself, it's not something you really want to sacrifice.
Yeah.
So, all right, cool. Well, thank you
Awesome.
so much. Yeah. And we will be back in another couple of weeks with more stories here on Investment Club PCS. So for
So
Steph,
excited.
yeah, I'm Kane, and thanks everyone for coming along on this ride, and we can't wait to do more.